Hi, Russ Bloch here. If you're watching this, then I hope that means that you've taken the first step on the path of the chief. You've decided to try and change your life by taking charge of your brain. Now, in order to change your brain, it's helpful to understand just a little bit about how your brain works. The path of the chief is all about giving you tools to find your balance and be your own leader for transforming yourself and your life. So knowing a little bit about the brain will help you walk this path with your eyes open. So the first thing that you probably already know, but your brain is what makes you, you. Okay, and the second thing is that the brain is not one solid organ. You know, it's not like your liver or your kidney or your heart. Instead, it's made up of a bunch of parts. All right. So over here, I have a life-size model of the brain. And there's been some colors added to it to help some of the different parts stand out more. In reality, it's all either gray or white. And, you know, this particular model comes apart into what's called the left and right hemisphere. And it breaks down further. These parts of the brain are toward the back. This is the brain stem, or half of it, right? The spine connects to this part of the brain. Behind your forehead, that part of the brain. And I dropped part of my brain on the floor, which I don't recommend other than with a model. All right, sorry. I'll stick into this video a diagram that shows even more parts of the brain. But don't worry, you don't have to be an expert on what are the names of the different parts of the brain. What you should realize, and I think this is really kind of cool, is that different parts of the brain grow at different speeds and at different times in your life when they're growing the most. Right? As you get older, parts of the brain like behind your forehead, the more thinking parts of the brain, you know, are developing a lot faster than when we're just a little baby. And something to realize is that some parts of the brain have language, have words. Other parts of the brain don't really communicate with words. Right? Like the feelings part of the brain. Why is it so hard for people to talk about their feelings? Well, because the parts of the brain that are in charge of feelings don't have a lot of words. So, you know, how do those parts of the brain communicate? Because there's all this wiring. All the different parts of the brain are connected by wires, by nerves. Well, like I said, some parts of the brain have words. Other parts of the brain, instead of using words, communicate with feelings, body language, symbols, dreams, visions, even music and other types of artistic expression are parts of the brain communicating, usually, you know, the parts that don't have words or don't have a lot of words. And parts of your brain, you know, there's one part of your brain that gives you, it's kind of the illusion, but it's a helpful one, that, you know, your brain's just one personality, so to speak. Your brain's just one thing. But that part of your brain is only aware of some of the other parts of your brain. The connections to parts of your brain that don't have words, it's not as aware of, and we call that part the unconscious mind. Right? So there's stuff going on when you dream, and sometimes something slips out. that you didn't mean to say, and we talk about that coming from the unconscious part of the brain. So that there's part of your brain that's doing stuff and you're not even aware of it, I think that's really cool. And I hope that's kind of interesting to you. And, it's relevant to walking the path of the chief because some of the exercises that you're going to do are actually going to strengthen your ability to know what's going on in those parts of your brain that don't have words. So, like I said, you don't need to know all the names of different parts of the brains, but there's different systems within the brain, and there's 4 of them, 4 what I call domains, parts of the brain that specialize in certain things that it's really helpful to understand. And first is there's parts of your brain that are in charge of emotions. So emotions, just a word for feelings and moods, right? People have lots of feelings every day. Quite often you can have several different feelings all at the same time, right? Mixed feelings. Moods tend to last longer. And you usually only have one mood at a time, even if it only lasts a couple minutes. So part of your brain is in charge of emotions, and that part of your brain doesn't really have a lot of words to express itself. Then, second, there's part of your brain that's in charge of cognitions. So cognitions is just a fancy word for thinking and thoughts. Thinking's when you're considering something. Thoughts are ideas that pop into your head, right? So cognitions is thinking and thoughts. So we've got part of your brain in charge of emotions, part of your brain in charge of thinking and thoughts. And another part of your brain that's in charge of behaviors. Behaviors consist of actions and reactions. Actions are things you say or do based on cognitions. In other words, you thought about something and then because of that you did something or you said something. Does that make sense? So we'll call those actions. Reactions are things you do or say that are based on emotions. You didn't really think first a whole lot about it, you just felt a certain way, and that prompted you to do or say something. So we call that a reaction. So 3 out of the 4 systems within the brain that an awareness of will help you walk the path of the chief are things you probably already have a pretty good sense of, right? Emotions, cognitions, and behaviors. The 4th part of the brain that's key for walking the path of the chief is called executive skills. You may not know that term. An executive is the big boss at a business. Just like the boss of a company, the executive skills part of your brain is in charge of making plans and is in charge of controlling the other 3 parts of your brain: emotions, cognitions, and behaviors. For example, let's say you get really upset, and then you're able to calm down, right? You've done that. It's the executive skills part of your brain that was able to calm down the emotional part of your brain. Same thing with thoughts. Maybe your thoughts have gotten out of control. Once in a while they race, or maybe there's just a lot of negative thoughts, say. But then the executive skills parts of your brain kick in and calm down the cognitive parts of your brain. And it's the same thing for behaviors. If you have behaviors that are out of control, out of your control, then it's the executive skills part of your brain that frankly isn't doing a good enough job. But instead of calling it executive skills, because that's kind of clunky and doesn't necessarily instantly makes sense to people. They got to think about, what does that mean? I call that part of the brain, that boss part of the brain, the chief. The chief is supposed to be in charge of making plans and regulating your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. If there's a problem with your emotions, thoughts, or behaviors, then your inner chief needs to be stronger. Does that make sense? The part of you that really controls your thinking and your feelings and your behaviors needs to be stronger. If there's problems in any of these areas, if you're unhappy, if you have behaviors that afterwards you regret. So that's what the path of the chief is about. It's how to strengthen that inner chief. And you're going to do it through exercises that are literally going to change the wiring in your brain. You're going to do it by making plans and practicing that and thinking about not only how your own brain works a little differently, but how you go about life, how you exist in this world and interact with other people. So in the next video, I'll teach you what happens in your brain when you strengthen the connections between the chief and the parts of your brain that are in charge of emotions, cognitions, and behaviors. So I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, you can comment, come to the website, and thank you for listening. Like I said, the next video will be on how to physically actually change the wiring in your brain. You do it all the time, and you can learn how to do it on purpose. So I'll see you next time. Thanks.